It's the SDG Podcast. Before we get started, you can check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com/podcast or find us on all the social medias, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Solution Design Group.
Today we've got Peter Lawrence, and say hi when I say your name.
Hi there.
So people can hear your wonderful voice. We have Chad Jetner, the mighty Chad.
Hey guys.
And we have Chad Levine, the mightier Chad.
Hello.
Starting fights already. And Ben Story is joining us.
Hey, everybody.
And so reInvent happened. Ben put together a big watch party. I think you had a couple of them where you guys really dug in, watched a lot of the reInvent stuff that was going on. And then, so you're probably pretty familiar with the announcements and new things coming along. So I think we can start by kind of talking about, the after party, the watch party thing, and how you, what that was all about. Because I just know you were in the room over there.
The watch party.
How did that come about?
It was really good. So, being that at SDG, we're all about learning, sharing, and connecting, and trying to drive community around all these fun things that are happening in our industry. So, not being able to go to reInvent, I was looking for ways that we could still get to watch a lot of the on-demand videos. So, what we did was we got a group of about 10 or 12 of us in a room and picked out a few of the highlights that we thought would be some really good videos to watch on demand. We started with one of the keynotes. So we watched the keynote together, and then we would kind of have a small group discussion around things that that stuck out to us on the keynote. And then we would go in and then watch one of the sessions that was recorded, and then have a discussion around that. So it was it was a really good day, learning, watching a few videos together and just learning from each other.
That's awesome. Chad, are you part of that?
Which one?
Either Chad. I'm going to go last name. All right, Jetner, are you part of that?
Yeah, I was able to hang out for a little bit of that. That was great. We watched, I was mostly interested in the AI presentation that they did, and deep dive into Bedrock and had a blast.
Chad Levine.
Yep, I was there for sure. Yeah, I thought it was kind of a cool way to get more people involved. We can only send a handful of people to reInvent if we actually go there in person. So it was kind of a neat way to have a bigger group kind of be part of reInvent, and a reason for us to all get together in the office, which is kind of fun. So
Peter Lawrence.
I was there too. You bet.
Wow.
Yeah, Kyle, you missed out. You should have been there. Everybody else was there, at least on this podcast. But
it wasn't just us, Peter. We had me, you, Levine, Lamer, Jason Lamer was there.
There are a lot of people.
Sarah Cooper. We had a really decent crew, and then a lively discussion afterward on each of the
I think that was the best part about it is especially, I don't know about you folks that went to the live event, but the viewing party event, it was nice. You had okay, the video's done. It's all fresh in your mind. Let's go. Let's talk about it. Let's pick it apart. Let's highlight the good stuff, the bad stuff, and everything like that, and get other people's opinions, because a lot of times with this technology, they'll see something like, oh, this will work great for this. And oh, yes, it will. Now that you've mentioned it, it's pretty clearly, good for using for, this or that, those kinds of things.
Just hearing that and not being a part of it and not really working in that space, I've learned so far that we should do this. We should do this even if we go to reInvent, for the people that didn't go and get that knowledge in a room. And we should be doing this for more than just, I think it's a great...
Yes, we did a lot of what we did in our office. We did that in reInvent. reInvent there was a couple of benefits to reInvent being there live. They had sumo wrestlers. We didn't have any sumo wrestlers in Golden Valley, Minnesota.
We could have.
Excuse me?
We could have. But we didn't. But the benefit of being in Golden Valley is I was in bed before 4 a.m. after this discussion.
And I think with the watch party, it's obviously there's a lot of benefits to going into reInvent in person, right? But just being able to absorb that one session and not have sensory overload of a big event that is reInvent by itself, because you're going to a session and then you might go do something else. And then you're going to a session and then you might go walk around the expo hall or something like that. So I don't know, just that focused time to be able to watch a session and then just talk about it like right there. I think helped provide a lot of value, top of mind information that you might not have fully remembered in the moment there. Because we did have, yes, you do have a lot of good discussions at the event, and there's a lot of good benefits to going. But I do think some of it might get lost in translation because, Chad's going to go to his own thing. Peter could go to his own thing. I'm going to go to my own thing. And then we're all like cross-referencing and trying to get all in on the conversations where we just all went to the same thing. So it was really nice to have good focused discussions on, Bedrock or, seeing Amazon Q and what that could do. So
Bedrock is the service within AWS that hosts different AI tools. Is that correct?
Yes, it's their tool that you can connect to large language models and then build your own applications using, like Amazon Titan or some of the other ones that are out there.
And then Q is Amazon's version of like a large language GPT large language model thing. Is that
I would say Q is more closer related to the other competitors tool where you could go in and say you want a dashboard. You could go into Q and say I need to build a dashboard off of this data, and it's going to like help you build a dashboard based on the parameters that you put in the chat.
I've used Q a little bit in the AWS console. It kind of sits side saddled to a lot of the services that you work with, right? So like I was working in API Gateway and Q was right off to the side. And anytime I had an issue, you can just go off to the side and say, hey, what did I do wrong here, right? And Q will give you some in-context clues as to, what your configuration issues might be. And it's very great at telling you to RTFM, and it provides the links to the FM part of that acronym.
So just like a senior developer would point you to the manual perhaps and give you clues.
Yeah.
But it's super nice about it.
It's actually...
I don't understand that, Chad. What do you mean?
I honestly feel better when a real person gets annoyed with me than like the documentation. It's almost cocky about it. Like, hey, looks like you're trying to do this. Maybe here's some documentation. But like the maybe feels very passive aggressive. That Q tool was definitely written by Minnesotans.
Excellent. We're very polite, I've heard. So what did you like? You learned about Bedrock and Q. What are the other things that you kind of took away from that stand out in your head?
Just how powerful and just where the world views like generative AI right now. I feel like 90% of that conference was just focused around that, and it was such a new thing. So just to kind of drink from the fire hose and really learn what all these large language models and what Anthropic is, or, all these other things that we can connect to, all these buzzwords we're hearing. To me, it was really nice to be able to have that focused time and learn what all these things are, what they could possibly help with, see some of the demos that they had. So I mean, that's for me, but I don't know if Peter or Chad.
I really like I'm jumping in here. I really like the Bedrock demo that they provided, or that the talk that they had. Really gives credence to the name, right? Like Bedrock, this is the base of your system. It's a starting point. It's done you still need or want to add your own information to it, but they've done a lot of the hard work for you, which really makes it like an easy starting point, I think, for most people jumping into this and getting to put your own data in. Really like that demo.
I was literally going to say the same thing you just said, Peter. So,
so was I, perhaps. So the watch party, you watched the Bedrock stuff and the AI and the Q and that. Were there any other things outside of AI or any other new things that you learned?
I think everything we watched was pretty focused on AI. That was a big focus of the conference. And I don't know about you guys, but it was an area where I don't have a ton of real work experience, right? So it was
Right.
kind of cool to dive into that and learn a little bit about, I mean, whether you're at AWS reInvent or doing the watch party, I think just having that time allocated to focus on it is huge, because like you could go watch these by yourself, right? It's kind of hard to get yourself to like go do that after work at night when you've got like family stuff or whatever. So like having time dedicated to like, I'm going to go learn some AWS right now. I think that's super beneficial. I thought like it was kind of interesting because we did watch a lot of AI stuff, sort of these recurring themes, one of which was people are really important. Like they kept reiterating that, right? The people are super worried about losing their job, right? Like AI is going to take my job. So that was kind of a funny recurring theme, at least to me, because it was so obvious that it was kind of comical that they're like trying to put everyone's mind at ease with this. So I thought that was cool. And then another like really important thing that they pointed out in several presentations, I thought, was how important the data is, right? Because they've got like this foundational service with Bedrock that provides several foundation models that you can use kind of tailored to types of data that you might want to do generative AI on top of. But then the cool part, the secret sauce for when you're going to create an application is training it on your data, right? And they kind of showed how this generative AI thing is cool, but the way you make it your own, it's all built on top of your data. And then they showed cool examples of you know, how you might incorporate it if you were, you know, what kind of company you were or whatever. So I thought that was cool. You asked about other things that we saw, Kyle, or you guys remember the Amazon Party Rock? I thought that was kind of neat.
For sure, yeah. That was one of the next things I was going to talk about or bring up as well, was the Party Rock.
And that's their new like dual turntable rave solution. DJ.
Exactly.
Okay. Cool.
Basically, I believe it's a free service that anybody can go out and go to the Amazon Party Rock, and it's a playground for Gen AI. So you could go and just kind of create your own little playground mock-up applications out on the web and just have some fun with it.
Party Rock. So
you basically give it a text prompt. Cooper was there with us, and he did it while we were there. You just tell it, I want an app that does this, and it creates a Gen AI app that will do whatever you ask it to. I think he made one that like gave him suggestions for what type of car he should buy, and it took, I think, 30 seconds.
So when you see me get a gig as a Java application developer that specializes in AWS, I'll have to have some kind of disclaimer. Party Rock. Yeah, this consultant is fueled by Party Rock. No, he's a Windows guy.
Yeah,
he's a Microsoft
you don't need
guy.
It's a code-free tool that you can just go and play with and put in some prompts and have some fun with Gen AI.
That's incredible. You know, this format of the watch parties, and like you were saying, Chad Levine, a lot of times you'll have these video subscriptions. You know, we have Udemy, and there's all sorts of learning paths, things like that. You have the phenomenon that if you give everybody a Udemy and say, now you have access to do all this stuff, you're only going to get like 20% that actually watch stuff. And I'm one of those people that's in the 80%. Like, I just never get around to it. But I like the idea of having it more of a social event and then being able to have discussion around it. You know, I can see doing that for a number of things, you know, just keeping that going. You know, you talk about lunch and learns, but that's kind of a one shot, you know, larger group situation. But just even partnering up on like a learning path and then having regular, like maybe 3 days a week, you do a hour a day watch party and go through it all. I think I'll do that.
All right.
I have several plans in the works now.
Well, and,
so thank you.
Yeah, and there's so much that you can reinvent on demand videos that you could really have like one per quarter and get through a quarter of the videos. And you know, just
because you guys only watched like a handful of what was available, right?
Yeah, we just thought like what could we get in a typical day? Like if we were out at reInvent, what would a typical day of reInvent look like? So we picked out four different sessions plus the keynote. And I mean, those between discussions and watching each session, which is about an hour or so long, that got us through the whole day. And that's pretty much about what you can expect. Like if you were to go to reInvent, you're getting to go, you know, 3 sessions, maybe 4 at most, just because of how spaced out things are. That was probably one of the biggest takeaways that we learned from when we were out there last year. Was I think we try to jam too much in certain days, and it just kind of can be overwhelming at sometimes too, trying with transportation and everything. So yeah, that's why we structured this one the way we did.
Well, and maybe even if you're going, you plan for that kind of, hey, we're going to do some watch parties after this so that we can we don't have to pack so much into it.
Yep. Yeah, I think that would be a good fast follow on going and just, kind of recapping everything and yeah, getting together with more people. And I just think everybody learns much better in smaller groups like that, because just the sharing, like what Peter talked about, was really eye-opening to me, because I haven't done a lot in this space like Chad and Peter and have, so just like hearing some of their stories of, client work and sharing information like that was just, I don't know, it was really fun to be a part of.
So taking all the stuff now that's come out of that, what are you doing with it? How are you moving forward now with what you learned in the watch party and just from all of the new stuff that's been put out there, released lately, improved Q and Bedrock and Watch Party? No, not Watch Party. Party Rock.
Party Rock, yeah.
I always think Boardwalk instead of Bedrock, and now I've got this Party Rock to think about.
So, I mean, aside from being a consultant and doing whatever your client asks you to do, right? You certainly have to be prepared for when they're going to ask you to do, like, hey, we should do some AI in this. Like, oh, cool, I've been preparing for this day. And that's the sad reality of consulting, right? Is like, you can go suggest things to your client and say, hey, this tool that I just read about will fit perfectly. We should do this. And sometimes they'll say yes, but sometimes they'll say no. I don't know. Chad Levine, you probably have sort of more opportunity you've seen a couple of clients, AWS installations and things like that. Anybody reaching for the stars yet, or?
Yeah, so actually, we had a couple people at the watch party that had more experience with generative AI than I do. I haven't done like a Gen AI project for a customer. I'm actually on one right now where we're doing more traditional machine learning. That one's pretty cool. I mean, I've done a lot of AWS projects, but yeah, no one's asked for Gen AI or Bedrock or anything yet. But it's like you said, I'm trying to get educated on these topics, so I'm kind of prepared for it and can at least talk about, what might make sense. We have this partnership with AWS, and we were just talking to one of their architects the other day, and they've got some customers that come to them and they, hey, we have an idea. Chad Jutner was there with me on that, and some of the ideas are pretty creative. And
that is incredibly charitable. I like how nice you are about that. It's very creative, their ideas.
Yeah, and so being prepared for those kind of creative ideas and how to maybe help steer in the correct direction, because maybe what they think about generative AI isn't accurate, or maybe they have a really good idea, but a lot of times what I've seen is not everything is generative AI. Sometimes it's just regular, machine learning or something like that. And so be kind of understanding what solutions apply to what problems helps kind of steer the customer in the right direction. So this is just kind of another new tool that we have in the toolkit, I guess. That's how I look at it. So it helped to kind of bootstrap us in this area to do this watch party, but it doesn't stop there, right? It's just enough to get us excited to kind of, keep learning and moving forward. So, watch more videos or hop out on Udemy or whatever and try to find out how does this work and what's it all about. And but AWS has made it easy with this Bedrock thing. Easier, I shouldn't say easy. But I like how they've got like several foundation models that you can choose from based on what problem you're trying to solve. Like that was all super cool to see. And so I'm kind of excited for the first customer that does come with that, maybe a good use case, right?
Yeah. And you guys are digging in to it and learning and also putting it together in your head of what the use cases are just from the years of doing this stuff. You're going to hit on things that make a lot of sense. You're like, okay, this is coming. We're going to start getting asked for this. We're going to start getting asked for a chatbot that answers questions about all the information for my company that's in our intranet. Things like that. A chatbot that serves up a file I'm looking for from our giant file share. Things like that. I hope you guys are taking notes. What are some things maybe that have come to mind that you've learned as you're working with these AI tools that, you could see yourself doing in the future?
Well, I think Sarah had an example, right? When we talked to her before, we're kind of building out a thing to search their HR documentation and stuff like that to learn about their benefits.
Right.
So that seemed like so they're not all crazy, right? Like some use cases totally make sense right now. Where it's kind of hard at a lot of companies to find what you're looking for your benefits stuff. And so that was kind of a good use case. They fed it all their HR data surrounding benefits, and then it would create sort of this, it's like a better version of search, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of places, I mean, I don't know if you guys remember building when it was really cool to build portals and portlets and all of that stuff.
That was cool.
It was for me.
There was a lot of, what was your word? Creative uses for portals and portlets. And that was a big deal. What was it? 15 years ago, 20 years ago, that was kind of what we were doing. And I think one of the best use cases for this internally for corporations that don't necessarily have an externally facing need for generative AI is larger corporations internally building out knowledge bases for help desks, for knowledge bases for HR data, for anything that you would have used a portal for in the past. I mean, it'd be wonderful if I was a Fortune 500 company. Instead of a huge portal now, I would just have a Google-like interface that says, "What are you looking for?" That pops up when I open as my default page in my browser, and that would be powered by AI tools that are hooked into all of your HR data, all of your IT issues, all of your, that is a valid and wonderful use for some of these generative AI tools and, building out the machine learning models around. I mean, I can't tell you how much time I spend at various large organizations just searching for the one form that I have to fill out somewhere that will get me a memory upgrade on my laptop or whatever silly use case there is for it. But I think a lot of organizations, I think that portal thing is going to come back a little bit and AI is going to be powering a lot of these utilities.
I do wonder if IT is going to turn inwardly and take a look at some of their code bases. I mean, some organizations have, gigantic repositories of code, bringing in someone new and there's throwing into the deep end, but a lot of times you get to focus on this one tiny window into their code or their platforms and things like that, but you don't see all the other different areas of different companies doing, and so having access to some of that, I think a lot of times, as IT organizations, you try to build these libraries and these cool organizations around code, but it often doesn't work because it's not maintained. It was really, really cool for a week, but 4 million lines of code and now it's out of date again.
Well, you talk about retrieving the organizational knowledge. One of the big things with the aging workforce, just
take that back.
the boomers retiring. It's like, what did they leave behind? What knowledge did we capture from them, or are we capturing? And
to double down on what
is
Peter's
AI going to be able to help gather that information?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I've seen in a handful of the large organizations that I've been able to be a part of is a lot of people use these hosted solutions now for, like, code repos aren't these state secrets anymore. It's not a CVS repo sitting on a Unix box that nobody knows about anymore. It's people are using GitHub Enterprise or GitLab or all of the hosted solutions, and the ability for us to go through all of the code at once is there now. The ability for AI. So I use tools built into my development tools now. We've talked before about IntelliJ's AI Assist. I'm getting a lot of utility out of that. That's not like a flashy, consumer-facing application.
Right.
But it is a
daily use tool that you use every day, right?
It's a daily driver for me. Expound that out to an entire I'm sure there's going to be code quality products that become a thing that that use generative AI, if it's not already. I know SonarCube does a lot, and I know some of the Vericode's tools do some of this.
They're getting there.
Exponentially, blow that out a little bit, and that's going to be for developers a daily tool that's part of our workflow.
I think having that, if you can have that tool that taps into all of your knowledge bases, repositories, things like that, because companies tend to have sprawl. People have their preferred tools, their preferred way of doing things. You have your GitHub folks. Some people will use Azure DevOps. Some people use GitLab. Some people will throw things on their desktop, on their computer. There's some stuff in their intranet. Stuff now is stored in Slack. It's like, okay, our stuff is everywhere. How can we kind of create this one system that will bring all that together and look in all those places? How will someone be able to tell me that the pricing sheet that's on my desktop, it has been updated by the person that makes the pricing sheets and posts it where I'm supposed to go get it, but don't because I downloaded it because it's easier when it's on my desktop? I'd like an AI tool that goes, wait a minute, that's been updated. Don't use that one.
That was an awfully specific use case.
About just productivity, how much is it going to help us be more productive? Because even thinking about AWS's Code Whisperer that they just came out with too from reInvent,
right,
to help developers write better code or write code faster. Maybe it helps cut projects down because maybe there's not as much QA going on because we're getting better quality code, faster code, and so that'll be really interesting for me too, to see how that even plays a part in this next stage of even writing code on using different tools to help us.
Yeah, and answers. People have questions all day long.
Right.
People you work with, they need answers. What does this jargon mean? What is just simple stuff like that. That's at your everybody level. Anybody can go to that portal or portlet, Chad. And ask that question, and it will actually go out. Because as consultants, we need to find that person our first week. Who's the person that knows all the things? How do I get this program? Where is this at? What do I fill this out? How does Chad get that form? So I think that there's a huge opportunity there. Building a large language model or whatever kind of model based on organizational content. How do you cut across all those different databases and repositories and things like that? How do you make sure they're good answers? We're talking about benefits information and a benefits portal. I think we are going to think about doing the same thing here. Is the answer going to be accurate? Can we rely on that? Because right now, there's one person I know of that is the source of truth for benefits questions or the documents that exist that are out there. So is there any problem with your AI hallucinating and telling you that anybody can get free health care in your family, even if it's your friend that you grew up with that lives 3 states away? It's that's not exactly true.
Well, isn't there that the reg data that you can add in? So that's your own company stuff. If we're talking, thinking about a benefits AI chatbot or something that you can ask questions to. You add your company files into this system, maybe using Bedrock or whatnot to build this chatbot. And then over time, that's going to learn to provide, better answers. You might not get the right answers right out of the gate, but it's just something that I think over time, the answers are supposed to get better and more redefined. And I think it'll also keep track of some history.
Yeah. So you're talking, Ben, about the retrieval augmented generation stuff, right? And
right.
We, our buddy Cooper built a little proof of concept, AWS tools to build out a RAG application that's really slick. He's got it out on GitHub if you guys want to see it. But Kyle touched on a question around how do you know the answer is right? And so there's absolutely going to be, we're going to give a talk about on this in a little while, our learning community around the boring AI subjects. And one of the most boring subjects around AI is going to be governance, right? How do you governance and maybe not as boring. QA could be kind of interesting, but we'll talk about the governance, right? Like you don't want to feed your model, even in a retrieval augmented data that you don't necessarily want, exposed to. So we'll talk a little bit about how do you govern the provenance of data that goes into the model? How do you secure sensitive information from leaking out through some maniacal AI prompt that's fed to it, and a handful of other topics. But yeah, governance is going to be a huge thing with some of these things. It's just evolved again into yet another AI podcast.
Here's my idea. Let's capture this. You go to a Slack channel and for benefits, and you ask a question, and it answers you, and Kim sees the answer, and if she puts a check mark there, then it validates that that's the right answer, and the system learns that. If she puts an X and then provides a correction, she's training the model. Yeah, I got it. I'm going to go build it. See you guys. That's kind of the stuff that we're talking about, though, is building that system and including the vetting of it.
Yeah, I think governance is going to be a huge key when we think about this, because how you can create a picture that looks identical to a person. It'll be interesting to see where it goes, because people should probably say, yep, this is a Gen AI picture, where that's probably not happening a lot today. Like to spoof a picture or something like that around governance and security. I don't know. It just kind of, I think if people don't take that into consideration from the beginning, I think AI has a lot of potential for bad things as well as good things. So I don't want to get too off a topic, but just something to consider.
I think when I first took a look at Bedrock, it had Stable Diffusion, and it was using a clean model, which meant that there wasn't stuff in there that was going to, make your image like ready for the internet.
Yeah.
So it's, making sure you're bringing in good stuff and not creating problems for yourselves.
Right.
So maybe there's some process for adding, like if you're running a server locally with it on there, it's, you have it all set up, you put all the safeties in place. Then you have a process for bringing in additional models that will make sure that your output is, appropriate for your business.
Yeah, that's kind of off the topic, though.
Well, that's governance.
Yeah, and governance is going to be key.
Yeah.
As is copyright, right? A lot of those questions are.
Yeah, and they did talk a little bit about it in some of the keynotes. So I know, like one of the guys talked about being, a frugal architect and thinking about that architecture, because I know he touched on that a little bit in his presentation, is to, when developing these new things, don't just develop them on a whim, but that's just a big key takeaway for me from one of those was be considerate when we're developing these AI applications.
So what do you feel you missed out on for reInvent? You did the watch party, so you kind of like filled your brain with some of it.
I think for me, it was the networking and meeting people. And when you're in some of these sessions, you're thinking about questions, and it's like, oh, I wish I could just go talk to the presenter and ask this question and get this thing clarified up real quickly and just have the 1 minute, 2 minute discussion with the presenter. To me, I think that was probably one of the biggest things I missed, was just, meet more people, networking and kind of having that person-to-person interaction out at the event.
Yeah, that was huge. So not last year, the year before when I went, I took this quantum computing track where I went to as many of those presentations as I could. It's one thing to digest the information during the session, but to be able to query, be able to interact with the presenters afterwards and be like, trying to connect what they're saying on stage versus how you actually digested it. That was huge, right? It's not. And it would have been, it's going to be great next time we go too, because it helped me a ton to be able to talk to these people and say, I hear what you said. Does it mean this, or am I way off base? And I want to know if I'm way off base, because you're going to form your opinion based on a presentation that you said, and I don't want to have a bad core to start with, Right. So most of the time when I went to these, it wasn't like, I'm going to find out everything about quantum computing. It was, I'm going to figure out if I can find out where I need to start and then go from there.
Yeah, I would say they also have on-site labs that you can do hands-on with experts there, which is kind of nice, right? So you can go to a presentation, learn about something, then go to one of these in-person hands-on labs where they've got it all. They've got an AWS, account set up for you to get your hands on it and try it. And then wave somebody over if you have a question, and they're experts in it. So that part is cool too. If we had access to those labs, that would be nice, but you still don't have that in-person interaction with somebody who uses it every day. And that would be super cool for these newer things like Bedrock, where they just came out, right? So the only people that have a ton of experience with it are going to be the people who built it.
So what action items or things did you take away from the watch parties you did?
For me, it was just learning more, just about the Gen AI capabilities, just to make sure that we can be able to help our clients the best we can.
Yeah, for me, it was just I need to learn more, right? Like this is just, we just got started, right? We just kind of scratched the surface of what we need to learn. And I think there's going to be a ton of work in data, right? Because data is what drives all of this stuff. So I think that's probably a huge takeaway.
The
Yeah,
other,
I mean, just like
go
being
ahead.
in live in person, I had dug in a little bit in Bedrock, and then being able to, I didn't have access to the presenters, but I did have access to Mr. Levine and Mr. Lawrence, Ms. Rochford, like everybody else that watched those same presentations. And we were able to talk about it right afterwards. And it's an experience that you don't get just sitting in your home office, pulling up the videos and saying, oh, okay, yeah, no, that makes sense. Because again, I don't want to have a starting point that's wrong when I'm walking through this stuff. And even learning with other people that are starting from the same point as you. And I think that's kind of where most of us are.
Right.
That's super helpful.
You can have those discussions. You can bounce your idea off people, and if they look at you like you're wrong, then you probably are. Like, oh, well, maybe that is wrong. Okay, tell me how it is supposed to be. That kind of thing. It's really helpful.
So were there any things where you thought, man, if I had this 5 years ago, if I had this like on this project, like, are you seeing ways that you could have worked it into past projects you've done?
Everything, every day.
I think for me, mostly it was the AWS Q stuff. I mean, if that was around from like a decade ago when I was at a much smaller organization and we were, well, gosh darn it, it's not just, I keep saying a decade ago. No, it was probably like 12, 13, 14 years ago when we first started pulling on-prem resources into the cloud. A tool like that would have been amazing had we had it, had it been packaged as part of AWS, right? Instead of reading a ton of documentation and instead of trying to figure out from people that are all trying to learn cloud deployments and cloud technology at the same time, one of the things you have to do is figure out like, all right, which of these guys actually seems like he knows what he's talking about? You got to find an expert that you trust. Having Q around back then would have been a massive help. And then I think a couple of years ago, like we saw a couple of things, Chad, at reInvent in Vegas. The hot start or cold start?
The cold start
switches.
problem. Yep.
Yeah, the cold start problem. Some of those things would have helped the adoption of those Lambda functions earlier on because it was a problem that we all had that they solved with a one switch on a big screen. So there's been things that they've presented that I was like, man, if this was here from day one.
Yeah, I think it's all pretty new and we're just learning how customers could use it for real use cases. But the things that are useful right now are some of the things you guys mentioned already. I think, at least from my perspective, like you said, Kyle, what would be awesome 5 years ago, the tooling stuff is really cool, right? So like the code assist and whatnot, one thing that goes right along with that I think is as useful or maybe even more useful is the ability to automate some of these mundane tasks. Like, can you make my unit tests for me, right? Can you write a script to load all this data? Because it'll just do it, and a lot of times, sometimes that stuff, maybe isn't as thorough as it should be, the unit testing and things like that, because developers see it like homework, right? And having a tool to make that easy is huge, I think.
Yeah, if I had this a lot more years ago, homework would be a lot easier too.
Oh, man. Why even go to school? I'm just going to use this tool. I'm just going to lie the whole time, pretend it's mine. So it sounds like you guys had a lot of fun.
We did.
So, Ben, you put that watch party together.
I did.
Thanks for doing that.
Yeah.
Sounds like it was a success. Let's figure out more to do of those, because I think there's a real benefit. And, if you're between things, or you find yourself with working on something that is part of what that, learning curve we all might need to go through, you could schedule it on your own. You don't have to be or in charge of anything. If you're just somebody that wants to learn how to do it, you can put your own together.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And if I was to, do another one, I'd probably work closely with our community leaders as well to make sure that we're not getting any overlap on stuff and all that. So
this also kind of ties into our learning community.
Yep, for sure.
We're doing, for the AI learning community, we're doing weekly meetups now at a coffee shop Friday mornings. That happened today. We're starting to get an actual turnout. Other communities, it's kind of dependent on the community, right? Because I don't know, don't get mad at me, Chad, but I think our Java learning community, there's not a lot of crazy exciting things, innovations happening with Java that, get people up in the morning to want to get together and talk about. I like streams, but boy, oh boy. Am I going to skip a happy hour to talk to a bunch of nerds about streams? Maybe not. But some of this AI stuff where we can bootstrap each other's, learning journey, that is actually kind of valuable. So
Well, in this case, it was alternative to actually going. We didn't send anybody this year, but I think if we send people next year, it should still happen. Can't see everything, and not everybody can go. Yep. So it sounds like a great thing. Any parting thoughts, gentlemen?
No, I don't have any. I just, go out to YouTube and watch some of the reInvent on-demand videos if you get a chance.
So not necessarily directly related, but the excitement around AI reminds me of the excitement around Java when it first came out, and the excitement around .NET when it first came out. You are excited, it's coming, you can't see the direction that it's going to take, and it's going to be boring one day, but you're glad you're there at the start.
Yeah, I remember that feeling when I got into Silverlight. Thank you. I'll be here all week. Chad Levine, any thoughts before we head out?
I don't think so. It's coming, right?
Yeah, it's inevitable.
It's coming. So be prepared, because it's going to become part of your job. That's kind of the message I see.
And that's really the thing is, how can it help you do your job? Not do your job, but focus on how it can help you do your job.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of angst around it, right? And I think that's probably unnecessary. It's just another new technology that we're going to have to embrace that will help us in ways. It'll help us solve problems more efficiently, things like that. So we just need to learn about it and understand where we should apply it.
Yeah, because IntelliSense or IntelliJ, when that first came out and was giving you code hints, didn't turn anybody on the street into a developer.
Right.
It was just a tool that helped, made you more accurate, sped you up, gave you a better end result. Yep, the cloud didn't replace systems people when we went to the cloud. Yeah,
that's a very good comparison, right? Because there was a lot of nervousness around that too. If you were somebody that worked in infrastructure, you thought your job was going to go away. A lot of those people were very worried about that, but it just changed your job, right? It didn't replace it.
Well, I think with that, we can call it a day. Thank you, gentlemen.
All righty. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Say goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
See ya.
Solution Design Group is a digital product consultancy in Minneapolis. Check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com or look for us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Solution Design Group.